A lot of us do things that aren't good for our bellies, whether we know we're sensitive to a food or not, or we just think, oh, it's just bloating, it's just nothing. But it is something, and we do it maybe almost every day, a lot of us. So I really think that abdominal work is important, even though and it's such a subtle touch. I don't know, I just felt it was very loving.
I wanted to just touch a little bit on the abdomen, just some of the work in the abdomen, because there's a lot of things that are happening with our stomachs and our gut and all of that, and it's very important to have healthy gut health, and we need to also be sure that we're detoxing our system from time to time, and sometimes it's really uncomfortable. But just as a therapist goes, if you want to just feel how the functioning of things are, you can palpate the abdomen very lightly, and then you can go to separate organs, and there's a motility that these organs do. And I'm not going to explain motility right now, but I'm going to show you. I have my hand on the liver right now. So I'm going to check the liver, because that's got different feelings. So this liver feels really good. Sometimes it feels very fatty, and sometimes it feels very hard. And so my other hand is just going to go to the rib cage there along where the liver is in the back. And I'm just going to let this thing move around, because the organs are squished in there. They have their positions, but they're also squished in there. And every time you move, they have to move in patterns. Where it feels like we have, kind of a sharp pain or a stabbing little pain, that's probably because an organ is getting twisted up with the fascial structure. Usually if you pull out of it, it's okay. So I'm just going into this organ, and you can do a little bit of draining of it. Here's the liver. So I'm just going to go slowly into the liver underneath it, and just kind of allow the palpation to move it around, and then drain it a little bit upward with a little bit of lymph. It's just a good idea to get it, especially the liver. Okay. And then the stomach is around here, so you can do the same thing around the fundus of the stomach. Just feeling where the stomach is. It's going to be close into the pancreas. You'll want to look at pictures on this. And again, you just get a grip on where you're at. This is very superficial work. So you get a grip on where the stomach is, and just let it rotate around a little bit. There's an awful lot of fascia sacks, bags. It's just wrapped in this fascial stuff. And then you have the mesentery on top that's holding it all in. So this is good to have the organs in, at least moving. They need to be also very pliable. And then over the spleen and pancreas is just more or less just feeling it. It's not anything you can feel real distinctly. Although you can feel the motility of the pancreas. It feels kind of like a fish tail, moving like a fish. And just allow that. Now when you get into the intestinals, the small intestines is all right here. There's a way to release the small intestines where they actually kind of more flow in the clockwise direction. There's all kinds of ways they go, but it's basically going in clockwise direction. So to release into the abdominal small intestinal area, if you place your hand right pretty much on the belly button area and spread your fingers out, and then this is tricky because you have to get into where you're really melding on. You're like holding on with a magnet, and then you're going to take the skin and you're going to rotate it in the opposite direction. And actually I'm going to use my right hand because I just work better with my right hand. So I'm going to rotate it backwards in the counterclockwise position very slowly, and I'm right on top of that mesentery here as well. So we're just doing that, and you'll feel it tightening, and then you just pause. Now sometimes this is easier done on the skin, but when you get a little bit more at it, you can get through that cloth and still attach to the skin, still influence the skin because you know what you're going for. Although the cloth is definitely moving ahead of this. There was a little bump there, there's some movement going on. And it's almost ready to stop, but I'm gonna hold that resistance there. Just hold it. It's not a big forceful thing at all. She's allowing it to happen. And then what you do when you find it, that you just hold it until it stops, and then at the stop point you hold it a little bit longer, and then you come off really quickly. And you'll see that there's much more softness in that. And again, I would say if you're going to practice that, practice it on the skin before you use clothing in between. Now the intestinal tract then, oftentimes when we're using, like when we're cleaning out our guts, a lot of things can get stuck, and I notice a lot of times it sticks over on the side where it's entering from the small intestine into the ascending colon. But we want to move everything first in the other direction, which is a lymphatic technique a little bit more. So we're going to have our hands here in this position, and we're going to just feel what's underneath there and let it flow kind of downward, because it's going to want to be exiting. So you just kind of let it go down a little bit. Just follow that skin, follow that organ in the way that it's working. The peristalsis will probably be a little stimulated through this. It depends on the condition of your bowel. The bowel carries a lot of waste, and people who have been eating bad food or a lot of chemical medications, things like that, sometimes it gets impacted along the wall. There was a little jump that happened here. It gets impacted on the wall so bad that it oftentimes will take 2 or 3 colonics just to get through that stuck stuff. And from what I understand, some of that is so tight and tough, and it's almost like rocks. In fact, one lady said she could barely cut it with a knife. She couldn't even cut it with a knife. She went on a very deep gut cleanse. Gut health is the key to our well-being, and it's very, very important. Gut health also helps us with our sinuses, oddly, because when you're more stuffed up in the sinuses, there tends to be a connection with the condition of the gut. And I'm just moving down, just kind of sweeping it down. Are you comfortable with that?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Now I'm going to go a little bit higher and move across the transverse colon and making space and getting the peristalsis, and now around under, it goes kind of under the liver. It makes bends. Like I say, just take a look at some anatomy books and get an idea where you're at. Now here is where it tends to collect, and I find this a big collection point for me. So what I do is, on myself, and I'm going to do this with Angie, is I'm just going to hold this and give a little tiny edging and push for this tissue that's underneath here, and see if it can start to move. Sometimes it's really hard feeling on the outside, puffy feeling, and we're going to move that up and around, moving up into that area and letting it go around, and then around here. And here I'm just moving it a little faster because we've already opened this area. So I'm pulling and pushing very gently, and that's strong words for what's happening, this whole area to move, to not be stuck. Sometimes when we, just combine foods kind of wrongly, we will feel bloated or we'll feel uncomfortable. So it's nice to just get these organs back moving again, reminding them that they do have motility and they need to behave. And you can also go underneath and just kind of pull up this way, where you're just, I don't know what you'd call this, like enveloping the waist and the parts behind a little bit to influence more movement of fluid, as well as maybe a little bit of blood flow, although it's not really going to affect the circulatory system so much, but it will help the lymphatic system. And then to see if there's any opening, you can do a lymphatic check where you're just checking, and what you want to feel is you'll go down into the water. So you want to get melded to the skin, and then you want to go to the layer underneath it, which is the fluid layer. So then you go from the skin to the fluid. And there you're going to see if you feel any flow, because I feel a flow going right up here, and that's exactly where the lymph needs to go. So there's more movement in her system now. The lymph is at least moving, so the rest of it can start to move, because we're so much water. We're made up of so much water that when the water starts getting a little bit stale, we're going to feel pretty icky all over. And of course, we want to have movement because we want to have good, healthy immune systems. And you can't have a healthy immune system if everything's going to be all clogged up. A lot of the immune cells like to be in lymph nodes to gobble up things on their way through. And the lymph system is probably one of the best mechanisms for fighting off any kind of thing that we have. It can fight off an awful lot. So it's important to do that, and that also comes through better gut health.
And that's the area where I was tempted to fall asleep the most. I imagine just a tiny bit of pressure on my stomach was calming the parasympathetic nervous system. So it almost makes, it helps me want to take better care of myself. I'll just eat that coconut and almonds, no problem. But just having that experience makes me feel more loving towards myself, really, like it's worth it to maybe just eat 1 or 2 almonds and give the rest away or something like that, or don't buy them next time. I don't know how to explain it other than it is more relaxed, and with that more relaxed, I don't feel as bloated either. I don't feel like I'm going to leave here and continue to have some stomach issues, whatever it would be, gas or rumbling or that bloatedness, or catching myself in a mirror and seeing, it just feels more soft, and I feel more relaxed too. And maybe the relaxation also helps the stomach area to, deal with an insult that I gave it. So anyway, that was a very quick way to feel like my stomach is relaxed and flattened, and we'll see.
So with that, I feel like it's softer. It doesn't feel quite as full as it was, and this is just rubbing. And then sometimes you can bring the energy up and out. You can actually feel the energy coming up and out, and then you just want to move that energy away. So there we have it. We have a little bit of the abdomen. You can just work a little bit of that way. So if someone comes in not feeling good, as long as you're gentle, you'll be okay. There's another little spot I just about forgot about. It's right between the ribs. It's called the sternochyli. So if you can take your finger after you're done and just kind of scoop up just a little bit, a little scoop, that will empty any of the lymph that's been dumped into there. And that's something that's pretty important when you're feeling bad. You want to make sure that the lymph is going to be moving out of the body. And then of course you just do a little of the lymph under the clavicle. Just a little push to move that lymph up and then back in, then the lymph can go do its thing.
There was, at the very end, there was a moment where she was working in this area here, and it felt like such a non-tended to area of my body, and it felt a little emotional a little bit later, almost like and I haven't asked her if that's associated with it, but there was almost like a crying feeling. It just is barely there, but it felt like a very unattended to part of my body when she worked in that little tiny space right there. And also I was thinking about, why is it when she talks to me about the jumping and the pulsing and the changing that it helps me tune in, but I think she's relaying to me what's happening in my body and I'm catching it. It's as if I'm starting to develop my language to hear it and feel it and tune into it. So that's why it's very helpful for me to tune in to what she says, whether I can feel it right then or not. It's just a process. And maybe the last thing I would say is that after working in the abdomen area, it helps me develop a relationship with this part of my body, like a more, like I feel like it's a living relationship, and maybe I will stop before I eat this, that, and the other, because I'm very caring about what I do to my body. So it's we'll see. I think it's going to continue to show itself. Like it's a living experience. It's not a snapshot. It's going to continue.
So if someone's really stuck in their body, they should have a full lymph system, lymph work done, because that'll open the whole body up. And it's easy to understand that if we just take care of the body at the subtle level, not only the subtle structure, but the cellular system as well, keeping the cells signaling with one another, that we can be in really optimal health, and we can enjoy our life and age with grace and just have fun. Appreciate it. Please like, share, give it a little thumbs up, and next time I'll be doing this again. Thank you so much.
And it's true what she said about trusting, just releasing and trusting the therapist. Though it is nice for that relationship to allow this aliveness to unfold.
Where you want to focus now, just like when everything you're doing, is there's the up and back, where you're pulling yourself up and back there from the base of the skull, and then you want to let your shoulders just relax and float, like they're floating on this oxygen. So they just float. So once you get that development and the neural pathway into that pull up and back, then the shoulders will be able to be very fluid and just relax, and you won't even think about them anymore, because you're going to feel
I feel
a lot.
it.
Yeah.
I already feel it.
Yeah, and then as the strength comes in the center, in the core, it'll even be easier, because your rib cage is really oxygen, it's air floating, suspended in air, and then the stability is from the hips down.
Okay.
So the neck is just kind of the point of, that's the pinnacle of it all, holding it all in place, but everything else is floating around that.
Oh, I really like that. It feels like weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Even just that.
Yeah, because when we start to feel like we're burdened with something, then we just kind of, like, I got to carry it on my shoulders,
Right.
and like that's going to help.
Right. It feels like don't need to do that.
Yeah, and then you probably feel much more open through
It does,
here.
definitely.
Yeah.
It almost feels like I'm going to go look in the mirror and see, am I walking funny now or what?
Yeah.
But it does feel more open.
Yeah, well, the proprioception will catch up to you.
Yes,
So, yeah,
that's
so
what's gonna happen.
it's funny because a lot of times people they get off the table and they say, oh, I feel so crooked, but they're actually really straight.
Yeah.
And then it changes very quickly, so that'll change for you.
Yeah.
And then if you just keep maintaining that, you'll build that neural pathway.
Okay.
And
So
that's-
it's not I'm not to expect a muscular fatigue from it or anything. I'm looking at just bringing that awareness, because I can feel the pull of it.
Yeah.
Right where you said to do that.
Yeah, that's going to feel like a little bit of effort for a while until it
Okay.
gets the pathway. But the thing is when you feel that, then you can let those shoulders just drop
Yeah, I
and be
would love
relaxed. Yeah, and then of course the back of the shoulder blades that will pull down because the shoulders have been, rearranged. Yeah, and there's more opening through there.
Okay.
And then the one part where you were saying about when I was mentioning things that I was feeling and how you were feeling something there too, what that's developing in you is that your body is actually showing me, we're communicating, and your body is showing me what's happening with you. And when I'm speaking it to you, then it's translating that. And so then you're able to, in your whole facility, you're able to go down and say, oh, that's what the body is saying when I feel that. And so you're actually learning how to get into better communication with yourself, as you were already picking up.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to solidify that it's like a back and forth. It's that trust, so that I'm guiding. I'm more of a guide than actually healer. I'm more of a guide to help you to be guided into what it is you're feeling and where you need to go with the body, so that your body can function so much better in these subtle anatomy structures, and all the other functions are going to help with that, because the energy is just going to flow much richer and purer through your whole system when you're like that. So just keep paying attention to that little stuff, because now you're able to translate it a little more, because you've actually heard how it feels, And so that's just another part you can grow with.
What is the benefit of that? I mean, I thought I knew the benefit of it. I just love it. I tune it makes me in the presence. But you're saying also that it will help me, or it'll help the body have more flow. Is that?
Yeah, at the more physical level, it does.
Okay.
But then it moves into the more subtle levels and actually into the emotional body where you really can feel the higher emotions. You know, the joy and the pleasure and just happy. Even though the situation might not look good, you can find that peace in there because your body is in a better functioning situation. Hormonally, you know, with pathways open for inflammation and all of that, because the cells will be signaling better and all of that stuff. So you move into the more subtle anatomy, your mind will be thinking different. You're able to open up your creativity a little bit more because it's all like one thing, you know?
I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
And that actually is a super high value of mine, is peacefulness in all situations.
Yeah.
I mean, not to deny anything, but seriously, peacefulness is...
Yeah, and part of that is also having the discernment to be able to discern what is what. Because when we can discern, then we can learn. And then if we see something that's traumatic, we can move into that without being into the emotional position of it. We can move into that from the logic and reason. And then the emotion doesn't get in the way and fog it up where we get torn back down into the lower dimensions. Then we can stay in that higher space and look at what's going on and say, well, this is just what's going on. So I have knowledge of this. So how can I work myself through this troubled time with grace and ease and balance? And that's where the magic happens too in life, because that's where the serendipitousness comes in and all that, when we can actually move out of, and it's actually moving out of our head and going into our heart. If you really want to look at it that way, it's very similar to that. So
yeah, I definitely pay attention to what's going on in my head because it's what's taking me out of my heart. I know.
Yeah.
But.
So this whole thing and all the stuff we've been working, and we'll do a little bit more with this too. I'm hopeful that that you're gonna notice that you're just kind of in a different vibrational space, a higher consciousness and a higher ability to move into a better conscious living condition.
Okay.
You know, because you know how some of them, they're always doing all this stuff and they're all so cool, but they're actually torn up on the inside because they haven't ever dealt with that part. So that's all superficial. So this is getting down to the real Angie and the the beauty and grace that you have to contribute to the world. So
yes, thank you.
Yay for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for the thumbs up. And I think there's a little bell up there that you can hit that you'll get a notification every time we post. So if you want to, you can hit that too. But thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it.